Hello, everyone, and welcome to Montessori 101, a live show from Child of the Redwoods, all about the magic of Montessori. We believe that every child deserves a Montessori education. I'm Aubrey Hargis.
And I'm David Hargis. So whether you're live or you're watching the replay or maybe listening to the podcast, we are just happy to have you with us. And if you would like to know more about our work, you could find us at childoftheredwoods.com.
Yes, fantastic. And we hope you do come and chat with us. Yeah. So our little news for today, before we launch into our episode about rainbows. And hands-on learning, which will be so fun. We are starting a new session of primary. So if you are out there and you're thinking, hey, I've got an almost 2-year-old or maybe a 2-year-old, a 3-year-old, a 4-year-old, a 5-year-old, that is the time to dive into primary, our foundation course. And joining primary will give you an entire overview of the whole Montessori method for 3 years. All right. So the price tag maybe looks high to you, but we're talking about 3 years worth of curriculum.
That's right.
It's a really good investment. It's one that thousands of parents all around the world have made in their children. And we have received thousands and thousands of thank you letters and
for sure.
tags on Instagram and all of that. And so we know that it's high quality because we know that the Montessori method actually works for children. It works for all children.
Absolutely.
Right? So if that is interesting to you and you want to take this journey, you're ready to dive into Montessori and learn the real authentic method, then consider joining our primary course. You can go to our website, childoftheredwoods.com to learn more about that. All right. Hands-on learning.
Yes.
So, little hands. Little hands. We know that little hands need to be busy, right? Otherwise, they're always
busy
causing
hands
mischief.
are happy hands. Is that right? Yes.
They are. Yes. Yes. I think every parent knows that a child who doesn't have something specific to do or isn't actively engaged in something with their little hands, like those little hands. What do they do when they're not engaged in something else? They'll find
something else. That's right.
They find something to be engaged in. And sometimes that's stuff that we like. You know, sometimes they just like gravitate on over to the art shelf and they start using their scissors and creating. And we're like, yes. And sometimes they gravitate on over. I remember our little ones especially struggle with this. They probably all do, but especially was triggering to you when they came over to our, is it called the receiver or the
the stereo?
The stereo, yes. And they would just like play with the knobs.
That's right.
And they would do this while David was at work. And then he would come home and like the volume would be crazy and all of his settings would be totally off.
Right.
And that was at a time when you were really into your stereo equipment and
that's right.
And nothing was digital. It was all like
it's analog.
You know. And so I know you were always coming home. You're like, what are you guys doing? You know,
that's right. That's right.
Why are they messing with my stuff? But of course the answer is right there. Like,
well, why wouldn't I mean those?
Well, their little hands are like right there.
Eye level
at toddler height.
Knobs are perfectly sized for little hands. They're fun to turn. They're weighted nicely.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm okay. All right. So that is definitely a hands-centric experience.
Yes.
And so when we say hands-on, we don't just mean hands-on, right?
Sort of.
Yeah.
Sort of.
Well, let's hear because I have my definition.
Okay.
And so I think hands-on is definitely about using the hands, but we more broadly use that term to mean practical, creative application, doing things. And in the modern world, or for older kids, even in the ancient world, the doing part might happen a lot more up here as they're going through that journey to abstraction. And as adults, right, we do a lot of practical, hands-on things that don't actually involve full use of our hands, although sometimes it can. So when we say hands-on learning, we don't just mean the little one going over and turning the knob and making the pink tower and so forth. We mean, or I would argue what we mean more broadly is practical, thematic, project-based, application-based learning, the best kind of learning.
Yes. So when I think of hands-on learning, I think of two things, which is why I hem and haw over that one.
Yeah.
Because first of all, those who have taken our primary course, we have a big discussion about the use of the hands. Maria Montessori actually, it's a very hands-forward method. It is. Maria Montessori was particularly fascinated with the way children in this particular age group, and she was really looking at like 2.5 to 6-year-olds. All right, so that age group really kind of just a bit past the super mouthing age that babies are, obviously, like for a baby, it's more about mouth. What would we call it? Mouth-on learning, right?
Yeah.
like it's the oral, right? The baby.
Well, they have so much sensitivity in their mouth.
In their mouths,
right?
Yes. And when they get a little bit older, in the second half of that first plane, and we have a whole video about the planes of development, I think, if you want to go back and look at that. Second half of the first plane, around age 2.5 to 3-ish to 6, that is when we really notice their hands becoming more of their primary source of information.
That's true.
Or at least their first go-to. But I agree with you, on that broader philosophical level, that what we're really talking about when we say hands-on learning is like body involvement learning.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we take a look at the actual Montessori lessons, we notice that in the Montessori method, like all of them in one way or another include some kind of body motion, and it might it might be the feet that are walking, in some Montessori classrooms, the children actually are encouraged to go barefoot inside the classroom. And that's because we know that the feet also have lots of little nerve endings. And I know when our kids go to their forest school, they're also encouraged to walk barefoot, even in the woods, and that's because we know that like that is a sense, that is our senses is where we take in information about the world. It's our primary way to take in information about the world.
And especially in that first plane, before 6, they're in a sensorially inspired period, right? They want to interact with the world through their senses, the touch, the hands, but the feet, the mouth, the ears, the eyes, everything, the nose, right? And that's why in the primary curriculum, you have so many wonderful sensorial areas to focus on. And when they get older and they make that journey into abstraction in the second plane, it becomes less about just the touching and more about trying to like process that and thinking about that. But even as adults, I remember a couple of years ago, do you remember this? We were hiking and we had to take off our shoes because we had to cross a little stream.
Oh yeah,
and it was too deep, so we had to take off our shoes. And we thought that we would just cross again very soon, so we left our shoes off to walk, and it wound up being quite a distance. And we kept debating, like, should we go ahead and put our boots back on, because it's like a process.
It was kind of prickly sensation as well. I remember at first we took off our hiking boots, crossed the stream, and the water was icy cold.
Yeah.
And then we got to the other side and we were like, we're just going to put our boots back on, but we didn't. Do you remember why?
I think because we thought the trail just immediately curved back. We thought
and we'd have to cross the stream again.
Yeah, and it takes, you have to take your gear off. You have to put your boots on.
So I remember we exited the stream. We were barefoot. We were in the woods. We were walking basically on a trail that was covered in soft redwood fronds. So
and not very well taken. It was pretty rough. It was a rough trail. There were lots of little soft fronds everywhere. And so at first our feet were fine. They were trying to recover from the icy cold water. And then as we started walking, I remember that you and I started having this weird sensation of like, I don't know, that we were being mischievous, or that like we were. Well, there's an element of danger.
I don't know. Yeah, we were like, at least I had the feeling like I was playing hooky or something. Like I was doing something that I'm not really supposed to do, which is you're supposed to like protect your feet. And I don't know. You just don't take you just don't take your shoes off when you're outside of the home. At least when you live in an urban environment like we do.
It's unusual, right?
Yeah. So anyway, we're out in the woods, and there could be anything on the ground. It could be caterpillars. Or
as an adult, we're thinking caterpillars, snakes, pokey things that are gonna what if we fall and hurt ourselves?
Yeah.
Because we have like the journey to abstraction is past, and we're now in the journey to neuroticism or something as adults. But to a child, it's just great, like because they just are alive.
They hardly even think about it. But Dave and I were like the whole journey as we were walking through the woods, we were like, oh, this is a new sensation. And then we were filled with kind of a euphoria. It was like,
it was a beautiful experience.
We're walking barefoot in the woods. And there was like this feeling of like, this is amazing. What an amazing opportunity that presented itself to us. And we took it. We just kept walking without our shoes. And then we kind of had this feeling of like, I wonder how long we'll walk without our shoes. And then I started having the sensation of like, gosh, my feet are getting really dirty. This is less comfortable than it was in the beginning. And then the ground changed and it wasn't soft or little redwood fronds anymore. It was like hard sticks and pokey things, as you said, like harder needles. And it just went from like, feeling like, can we really do this, to feeling like, yay, we're doing this is awesome, to like, when can I put my shoes back on? Because the sensations were so strong.
Exactly.
Which is unusual for us as adults because we go about our lives and we've more or less adjusted to the sensation of things. I wake up in the morning and I expect my coffee to be hot in my mug, or at least warm. Hopefully warm. But to a child, their senses are so much grander. In everyday life, with anything that they touch or experience, it is that I imagine they are going through that whole process of that sense of euphoria that we were experiencing in the woods because we were, our foot senses were so heightened during that time.
Well, yeah, you see a child, we saw this the other day, that you see it all the time playing in the mud. Now, as an adult, this seems like a terrible idea. I have no interest at all in hopping in a mud puddle. But these three little girls were having a grand time, as all children I've ever seen have a grand time splashing in puddles.
There are children who have a sensory aversion to sticky or wet things.
It's not the normal experience for a child. I think
I guess you could say like the neurotypical experiences to jump into the mud. And there might be some differences, and that's perfectly okay.
Sure.
Yeah.
But in general, as my experience, our boys at least, they really love jumping in mud and
many children do.
Yeah. I mean, there for sure are kids who are like, nah, I don't want to deal with that. But more than adults.
As your mother would say. About you on the beach.
I know. I was saying exactly. On the beach, when I was a kid, I hated the beach.
Okay,
water.
So
the point is that those sensorial experiences tend to pull to a child. And so when we talk about hands-on learning, and we're talking about the 6 and under set, that first plane, we are really talking about hands-on, or more broadly, sensorially rich experiences. Like, for example, we're talking about prisms today, and you're not going to touch a prism per se. I mean, you could touch the actual prism, but the light or so forth, it's more of an optical thing that you're experiencing, right?
That's right.
So it's about experiencing things. But I also always like to stress that these are experiences. When we say hands-on, we don't just mean littles. We mean all human learning. So for your older kids, and even for you as an adult, when we say hands-on learning, what we really mean is things that are practical, things that are expressive, things that are creative. And the way that we should structure our learning is we give a little bit of direct instruction. Because there is a place for more rote or direct teaching. Sometimes you just have to memorize your math facts. Sometimes you just have to...
Eventually, but not for a while in Montessori.
Well, right. Or you have to remember that, how do you remember the names of the notes on the staff, right? You have to just kind of remember that the C is here and the A is there, right? There's just certain things you have to commit to memory. But that should be done in small bites. And then you should spend lots of time actually doing things with that information.
Correct. Yes.
And that is the hands-on practical piece. So a little bit of math facts and a whole lot of doing math would be the example.
Yeah. So when you said a little bit of memorization, I immediately was like, but if you do hands-on learning, memorizing sometimes happens immediately. But then I thought, when you said just a little bit of memorizing is good, I thought about the 3-period lesson.
Yes.
And that is helping children memorize just a little bit.
Exactly.
So that they can get the terminology, the vocabulary down, to just do a little bit of memorizing so that then they can really engage with the hands.
Exactly.
And then make that connection.
Yeah, exactly.
So
right.
yes, that is how Montessori works.
Yeah, well, that's how all the best learning works.
Okay, so let's talk about the core subjects.
Yeah. So what does this actually look like when we say hands-on learning? And I don't know if I think for our purposes, we're going to talk maybe about the younger set, the more actual, physical, tangible, sensorially oriented. But
this goes for everybody.
It goes for everybody, like we said. So in our work, we've identified 10 core areas in the Montessori curriculum, and these are true for both primary and the lower L, which goes through. For us, it goes through 9, but the upper L will go through 12. But I would say that all humans at all ages are experiencing some degree of this. Now, in the younger years, no surprise, based on our longer discussion, sensorial and practical life are much more prominent in the curriculum for the under 6 set, and then more integrated into other things for the older set. But as, again, with our story about walking barefoot, that sensorial experience was still really meaningful and rich, even though we're fully grown adults. What are the other subjects that we would include? Well, there's the sciences, physical science and life science. So physical science would include things like geography and physical laws, intro to physics and things like that. And the life science would be biology. It would be study of zoology, botany, the evolution of life. So let's just pause there and just thinking about those two sciences. What are some, when you think about a hands-on, what would a hands-on activity in physical science look like for it? Let's say an under 6.
For physical science?
Yeah.
Clay.
Working with clay.
Yeah, or a sand and water table.
Right, because they might be building, I was thinking that too, like you might use clay to build something and then you pour the water on it. And so you're using your hands to actually construct it. And what you're learning is landforms.
Right.
Okay, so then we also have, we move into sort of the arts. We have.
Well, did you want to talk about life science?
Yeah. So in life science, what do you think?
So in life science, I was thinking what came to mind actually was parts cards, which are very reading and writing based. Okay. They're very reading, actually just very reading based. But they allow the child to manipulate images in a hands-on way. It is a little bit different from just reading. It's essentially like you're going to take a little book. You want to show them an example?
I don't think we have a parts card in this particular.
Those are parts cards.
Here, this one?
Yeah.
This is from the Pigment packet.
This is from Pigment. Okay. Yeah. So parts cards are, we've got 1 image, 2, a little separated word, and we've got 3, we've got this little information section, and then we've got a control card here. All right. So it's like putting together a little puzzle. They put the picture together with the word, match the word of the picture, and then they read the information and match the information to the picture and the word as well. And then they can check by using this control card here. All right. So,
and this one, just for understanding, is about natural pigments.
Right. Okay. So essentially what I want parents to know about parts cards is essentially we are taking a little book and we are chopping it up into parts. And then we are allowing the child to puzzle piece it together. And this is not to say that you don't want like reading nonfiction books isn't enough. Like read nonfiction books. They're great. Those little nonfiction books are great for kids, but part cards actually, the benefit of parts cards is that it's basically you're taking a little nonfiction book, you're cutting it up into little puzzle pieces, and then you're spreading out the puzzle pieces so that children can put the puzzle together.
Yeah.
And I think that sometimes parts cards are overvalued because in Montessori, that's one of the easiest materials to like find online is parts cards. But the primary purpose is to make text physical.
Yeah.
So.
And to introduce those little nuggets of information.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So let's go on real fast. And we need to do this part real fast because I want to talk about prisms.
Okay. All right. So the other subjects that we would cover would be humankind. That would include history, anatomy, human development, the way that we describe the world, political geography. So flags, working with the little flags and maps would be an example. The arts, so the origin of art, music as well, painting, sculpture, the visual arts, reading and writing, of course, so literature as well as learning the basics of writing and reading. And there's millions of hands-on, I won't say millions, but there are a lot of great hands-on activities in Montessori related to reading and writing. Grammar, which we don't study in super depth in the primary years, it's more incorporated into reading and writing, but is definitely a subject to study as you get older. And the thing I love about this when
you can still study it orally.
You sure can.
Yeah.
And when I think about grammar and hands-on it, I love to think about the grammar symbols, the wonderful little symbols where you actually physically can parse a sentence.
I like to think about the grammar farm, where it's like a little, like a little barn with animals that can be manipulated.
Yeah, and then you can use the symbols with those. There's a lot of hands-on ways to do that. Math and then geometry. So math would be math, so the beads and using the beads or
we just got some colored beads right here.
Obviously, a lot of great hands-on learning there.
Mm-hmm.
And then geometry using the shapes and so forth. So those are the 10, including practical life and sensorial that you would cover. And again, the idea is you're going to give little bits of information and then you're going to use a hands-on approach to help bring that to life for the child.
Correct. All right, let's talk about Pigment. We're not going to take you through the whole packet. This is from Constellation, by the way. This is our theme for February.
Yeah.
That our members are currently doing, and it's not too late to jump in and join Constellation if you want to do Pigment with us.
Yep.
And then next month we're going to be doing Peaceful. So 2 P's in a row, Pigment and Peaceful. I didn't realize we set it up like that. All right, so we're going to go to the lesson that is actually about prisms. And do you want to hold this up? Okay. So it's an example of what the lesson looks like in the book. Everything in Constellation is scripted. So this is information that I actually did research on when I was doing this work. It actually takes a lot. It seems like it would take not too much time to write a lesson, but when you do all the research and scripted, it actually takes quite a bit of time. Yeah. So anyway, everything is scripted. This is like the lesson that you would actually read aloud to your child or kind of summarize for your child if you wanted to. Just talking about the origin of rainbows. All right. And then it kind of ends with an invitation with some vocabulary words highlighted to explore prisms. We give you a little instruction on how to do that. So we're going to show you 2 different prisms that we have. Talk about the ways to incorporate this into your homeschool environment. And it's a really, I think it's just such a quick win. With every age group. It's a quick win. So the first kind of prism that you might be used to thinking of when you think about what is a prism in terms of education is this kind. And ours actually arrived, we bought this online. It actually arrived in this cute little red box. Said it was a prism for photography, or could be used for photography or school. And it looks like this. It's
a nice one, right?
Yeah. It is. It's a nice one. And the shape is actually really special in Montessori because, do you remember the name of this shape? No, it's a triangular prism, and it's found in our geometric solids in Montessori. So this is, so that's one connection that you make right away is as a hands-on approach, exploring just the shape of the prism itself. So the way you would use a prism like this is you could kind of stand it upright and put it next to a sunny window, experiment with it, put it on your windowsill. There's no sun. Well, there is sun today, but we're downstairs. And see if you can get a direct beam of light through it. You might have to experiment taking it in different situations, use flashlight. Our son was able to make a rainbow in his dark closet, even though it was too bright for us to really see a rainbow with it, with this very dim flashlight we were using it upstairs. We were able to see it when we went into the closet. So this is a kind of prism you probably remember from maybe exploring in school. It's a schoolish Prism, elementary school probably. And those are great, but they're not our favorite kind of prisms to use with kids. Favorite kind of prisms to use with kids are these really, really cheap prisms that you can buy. Well, you can buy them online for, just a few dollars.
It's just like a craft store.
You could buy them at a craft store. I think we bought ours we bought several at a fair, fairs, like little festivals or state fairs type of thing. Sometimes they sell these little window catchers, sun catchers.
Sun catchers, yeah.
And the wonderful thing about these, this one came in a pack of 2, actually, which is really nice. The wonderful thing about these is that you can hang them up and just let your child discover what happens. Hang it in a sunny window and then just let your child, don't even say anything about it. Let your child discover what happens. And if they don't seem to notice the rainbows that are all over your room, which I promise you, it's very dramatic when the sun is shining and it actually hits it. And you might have to wait for a particular angle of the sun, and it can be an explosion of rainbows and then over within like 30 minutes or 15 minutes. I mean, just depending on
it's going to depend on the time of day, the location of the window, and what season you're in.
What season, exactly.
The sun will have moved through the sky.
Right. And so it could be that you could shift your prism around to catch.
You could, but the discovery is the amazing.
The discovery is so fun. It is inherently hands-on learning because your child is going to see a real rainbow and be able to interact with it. We just saw a rainbow just the other day when we were hiking. I was really, really hoping that we would. It felt
because we had just been working on this
kept
Pigment.
Mentioning it. Right. I had just gotten done writing Pigment. And we just published it. And I was like, I have to see a rainbow, like a real big, beautiful rainbow right now. And then we went hiking and it was like a perfectly rainy, sunny day. It was like rain, then sun, then rain, then sun, then rain, then sun. And then it started to rain while we were hiking and I got in a bad mood because I was like, now we're hiking in the rain and we were on these steep areas. It was real mucky. And I was like, how long is it going to take us to get back to our car? Am I going to
I think you were fine until we realized we had gone the wrong way and we had to backtrack.
Yes.
So
there was that moment.
Yes. But
and then it was cold and I was like, I'm not happy anymore. And then when we trudged up this muddy hill, we finally got to almost to the top, and then just this beautiful rainbow appeared.
It was
magical.
Yeah.
But I couldn't go feel it. I couldn't go touch it, and I think that's part of what makes rainbows so mysterious and lovely is that they're ethereal. Right.
Yes,
right.
That's right.
They're you look in the sky and they may appear and then they may disappear really, really quickly.
Yes, and you could see them. They seem to go somewhere, but if you walk to that spot, they're constantly moving. It's not going to be there.
Right. So it's really hard to interact, and they're really cool to witness, but they're really hard to interact with in a hands-on way. And so having a prism in your home allows your child to interact with the visible spectrum of light, which you can actually introduce to them. It's not too high level for any child. You can introduce that concept to your toddler, point out the rainbow. And if they discover it, you say, oh, I see that you are touching you're exploring the visible spectrum of light, show a little graphic.
So you might this is where you might introduce something like an impressionistic chart to show how the sun, the ray of light comes in and then is refracting and causing the visible spectrum, and what are the colors, or however we currently name them. I think it changes over time, but naming them, that would be one way that you could extend this and help them understand.
Yes. I feel like when you look up rainbows,
you can also start to actually dig into what the wavelength is like. Right. And sort of help them. And again, this would be more, I think, for an older child. But the gateway is the sensorial experience, right? They're seeing this rainbow. They're like, wow, it's amazing. How does that happen? And then you can use Montessori materials like these wavelengths.
Well, we say older child. And yes, it's true. An older child is going to get something different out of an impressionistic chart or something different out of exploring the wavelengths. They'll understand math
That's true.
better. They'll be able to get it conceptually. But Maria Montessori never shied away from
That's
exposing children to high-level concepts through their body, right? So we can think about the pink tower actually is showing an algebraic is it an equation or is it like, I think so, right? It's showing cubing. And there are also lots of materials that actually do show algebraic equations. I'm thinking of the binomial and trinomial cubes, which is actually it's like a 3D puzzle that your child does. It's actually quite complicated and very, very little children can be successful with them and do them.
That's right.
Even as an adult is like, it seems like, what do I even do? Like a child can very, very quickly put it together. And you don't have to necessarily, if your child is young, you don't have to like make it super scientific. The physical interaction with it is enough. So you just showed the wavelengths. So making some wavelengths, you could make them with Play-Doh. You could, we have this one is actually for tracing inside the constellation unit. But
you can make them with yarn.
Yeah, or just interacting with waves, in your bathtub and calling them waves, and then telling them that light makes waves too.
They're just really, really, really tiny.
They're just super tiny, right? Yeah.
And that's what makes the rainbow. So you're absolutely right. So that is
but it begins here.
It does, and I would say
physical.
Yeah, I really always want to emphasize your child is like a cup. They can take as much information as they can take. So never be afraid to try and elevate the conversation. If they don't get it, it just pours out and they'll remember the stuff that they do. And then when they get older or when they're ready or they hit a sensitive period for it, that cup gets bigger and they'll hold more information. But you're not going to break them by giving them too hard or too complex or too interesting information.
Yes. And that is what we often don't see when we Google rainbow activities for preschoolers.
Right. Yeah, you'll see.
What we usually see, we see like paper plates that have been colored in the rainbow, or we see, rainbow bulletin boards with rainbows all over them.
Yeah.
Or, but what we even want to do with our very, very little children is not dumb things down. We want to give them the high level vocabulary and then just trust that they're just going to absorb what they're going to absorb. And often what they end up absorbing is totally mind-blowing.
It is. And they may not be able to bring it back to you at that moment.
Yeah, and we don't need to quiz them about it or anything.
But that you're introducing it, I think you will be surprised to hear that language come back to you in subtle ways, like through play or through their own experimentation. And that's only possible when we don't underestimate a child's ability.
Correct. All right. We're going to wrap it up here. Go find yourself a prism, friends. Go play with some rainbows, hang it up in your window. And then always, we would love to hear from you. If you try that activity and it works for you and you love it, please send us an email or chat with us on our website. We love to hear from members and from
other
viewers who are just hanging out with us on YouTube.
Yeah, if you come up with other cool hands-on ways to teach the visible spectrum or prisms or light, we'd love to hear that too.
Yeah. Same. All right. Take care, everyone. If the Montessori method, again, is calling to you, please consider joining one of our foundation courses. Primary is coming up. It's going to be so exciting.
Constellation. If you're interested in thematic learning.
But primary is time sensitive right now.
That's true.
Yes. All right. So anyway, take care, everyone.
Yep. See you soon. Bye.